Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all today, rain or shine. As this pandemic is finally beginning to fade away, I often find myself reflecting on what this past year has taught us. Certainly, there have been some tough lessons we have learned thus far, but I think, much like anything in life, there's somewhat of a silver lining. Now, believe me when I say I'll get sick if I hear another advertisement about unprecedented times. Though talking about COVID has become a cliche at this point, I think it's still important to leave this disaster with what we learned from it, not what we wish we had. It's becoming increasingly harder to remember what our lives used to be, before masks and quarantines. One thing I recall, though, was how guaranteed everything seemed. There was almost never any uncertainty about events, people, or health. Something I realized almost immediately after the world lockdown was how much we had taken the world for granted. I, for instance, took my freedom of choice for granted. Before the pandemic, it felt like there were new opportunities and new people that I could see every day. Once the pandemic hit, I couldn't even see my friends. It felt like I couldn't go anywhere or do anything. So, for sure, there were lots of things I never realized I had. However, taking something for granted isn't necessarily bad. What I like to think is that we will be more grateful for our lives once we get them back. Consequently, as odd as this is to say, that's something we can thank COVID for. COVID taught us a life lesson that is sometimes glossed over. Life is about realizing that good moments never last, but neither do bad ones. It's about deciding which ones you'll let affect your life. God is constantly giving us opportunities. Even when it seems like there's nothing to be happy about, He gives us chances to fulfill our wishes, grow into better people, or become closer with people we care about. It's up to us, though, to take His opportunities. For example, He gave us a chance this past year to slow down and really appreciate what we had. Right now, admittedly, there aren't as many good moments as we'd like, but we wouldn't appreciate the good moments without the bad ones. The trick to life is living in the good ones. In 1915, a man named Alan W. Watts was born in England. He was a writer and speaker of philosophy, known for interpreting religions like Buddhism for Western audiences. He wrote over 25 books and articles about philosophy and religion. I'm mentioning Mr. Watts because I once heard a quote by him that will always stick with me. If you awaken from this illusion and you understand that black implies white, self implies other, life implies death, or shall I say death implies life, you can feel yourself. Not as a stranger in the world, not as something here unprobational, not as something that has arrived here by fluke, but you can begin to feel your own existence as absolutely fundamental. I like this quote for a few reasons. Firstly, it reminds me of how our existence, our lives, seem very purposeful. What I mean is sometimes I remember how incredibly rare life in our universe is. So rare that we have only found it on one planet in all of our years of searching. I feel like this sparsity of life adds meaning to ours. Another reason I like this quote is that it ties in with taking things for granted. God, through whatever means, enabled us to exist on such a good planet, despite being surrounded by a notable lack of life elsewhere. That, I believe, gives us something to be grateful for, and a reminder that our lives aren't necessarily for granted. This fact is something to take comfort in and rejoice for, because it proves how much God cares for us. Despite the hostility of the universe and the unlikeliness of life beginning, God allowed it to begin. Furthermore, He allowed us to flourish and give ourselves meaning. Truly, the greatness of life is the fact that there is something to be grateful for everywhere. Sometimes we need a reason to stop and realize that we should be grateful for something. Unfortunate as it may appear, our reason was the pandemic. It allowed us to have our lives entirely broken up so as to see what we have and become truly appreciative. I'd like to leave off with words from the book of James. Chapter 1, verses 2 through 6 say, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith, with no doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind." So before this pandemic is over, remember how we can learn from any situation good or bad. And never underestimate the value those lessons can teach us. Thank you.